The champagne flute slipped, kissed the hangar concrete, and burst, glass skittering like cold rain around my boots. Jet A hung sweet and metallic in the morning air. A tug beeped somewhere near the bay door, steady as a metronome that didn't care about feelings. My pilot badge tapped my collarbone. Tap, tap, the only knock I needed. "Careful, Jane," Dad said, too loud for the ramp. "Wouldn't want your little gig to cut itself." His voice carried. A wrench dropped in an empty bin. A line tech glanced over. Luis Martinez, my crew chief, paused in the pre-flight and lifted his chin a notch. "You good?" I was. I'd survived weather meaner than pride. I swept the glitter into a pan, bristles rasping. The falcon's skin reflected sky like a promise. Our medevac bird sat fueled by the door, stretcher rails gleaming. Mom hovered with a gift bag that smelled faintly of department store perfume, her smile folded thin. "George," she murmured, "let her." He wrapped his knuckles on the nacelle like it was a pickup hood. The sound thudded wrong. "Real work gets grease under nails," he said. "Not this." He waved at the jet, the crew, my life. Black SUVs rolled to a smooth stop. Security stepped out first. Sunglasses, clipped radios. Then the rear door opened and General Robert Franklin emerged, blues pressed like a thesis. His gaze swept the ramp and landed on me the way a pilot reads a windsock. One look, everything said. "Ms. Thompson," he called, easy and exact. "Owner-operator?" "Yes, sir," I said, offering a clean hand. "Thompson Aero Logistics. Welcome aboard." Dad slid in, grinning for the hangar. "General George Thompson. Jane's smart, sure, just no grit. Bit of a disappointment." He chuckled like the line existed to hear him. The air thinned. Even the tug seemed to listen. Luis didn't move. Neither did I. General Franklin's eyes cut from Dad to the jet to the arc of glass glitter by the chalk. He looked back at me, voice dropping a half step for the truth. "Baltimore medevac. Your crew flew second leg. Kept a child breathing in weather most men pray through." He turned, palm on the boarding stair, quiet as a verdict. "We'll board in 3. Dad reached for the rail first. "Let me show you around," he said. "Jane can fetch coffee." Franklin pivoted, hand still on the stair, and set the words down where everyone could hear them. "This is Jane's aircraft yacht," he said. "Her company, her team." The ramp went still in the good way. Mom's ribbon slackened in her fingers. The bag drooped. My pilot badge tapped, tap, and held. Luis handed me the logbook. His thumb rested on the checklist like a blessing. Hydraulics topped. APU sweet. Right main looks talkative, within spec. "Copy," I said, taking the stairs 2 at a time. The cabin swallowed me in leather and lemon wipes. At the breaker panel, I slid a crayon thank you from a kid named Ruth. "Thank you for flying me out of the bad water." Under the clip where I tap before start. Tap, tap. Through the open door, I saw Dad, smaller by an inch. He didn't know he'd lost, staring at the jet like it had just introduced him to himself. The shards of glass caught sun and threw it back in pieces. "Luis," I said into the intercom steady, "let's start this right. I grew up where pride smelled like cutting oil and hot steel." Dad's shop clock clanged the top of the hour. Belts squealed. Men shouted over drill presses with their sleeves rolled like declarations. "Real work leaves splinters," he'd say, tapping his palm as if knuckles were a resume. Mom stacked invoices at the kitchen table, smoothing the corners with the heel of her hand the way she smoothed Dad's tone in public. When I first said Navy, he laughed like the word bounced off concrete. "You'll come back when you miss tool," he said, a joke that never learned how to land. The Navy taught me another language: checklist, torque, trim. My pilot badge left a tiny bruise on my collarbone after the first sloppy pull. I learned to respect the tap. Course correct, fly numbers. Ready rooms smelled like burnt coffee and dry arrays. Hangar floors held the shine of 1,000 swept mornings. Up there, hands were tools, and work didn't need grease, to be honest. When I rotated out, I didn't want down. I wanted a runway I could build. Thompson Aero Logistics started as a logo I stenciled crooked at midnight, and a Cessna that wanted proof I loved it. I sweet-talked a bank manager with a binder that clicked in the right places and a safety plan that read like a promise. The first month, the hangar smelled like bleach and hope. By month 3, it smelled like Jet A and systems checks. Dad called it cute. At the VFW, he'd clap my shoulder and perform the bit. Jane's got a little flying gig, smart kid, no grit. The men laughed into their highballs. The jukebox coughed a veteran's favorite. I learned to smile for the room and spend the drive home counting what it cost. Luis Martinez found us on a wind-torn afternoon, retired Air Force crew chief with wrists like wrenches and a voice that could calm a compressor. He could hear a failing relay with the engine cold, smell an over-torqued fitting through a photo. We tagged each other by last name because trust stays tidy that way. He taught the apprentices, 2 veterans, 1 kid from the tech school, that safety wire is a language and torque wrenches keep secrets if you treat them right. On the whiteboard, tail numbers and call signs marched. On the ramp, we learned which lineman favored precision and which favored speed, and assigned accordingly. Baltimore rewired my ear. Storm smell, river, and ozone ran under rotor wash as our medevac bird bit rain. We ferried a child through gray that felt like a hand, rails clattering faintly under the blanket's weight. Her name was Ruth. She had a yellow raincoat and a grip that said, "Don't you dare let go." "We're a bus with better views," I told her, and Luis laughed in my headset because we prefer boring metaphors when everyone else wants heroics. Later, a crayon thank you arrived. Thank you for flying me out of the bad water. Sun in the corner, our plane a rectangle with stubborn wings. I slid it under the breaker clip where my fingers tap before every start. Tap, tap. Dad saw the headline, not the weather. "Chasing publicity," he said, the same volume he used for Pass the Salt. When a donor sent champagne after our first incident-free year, he popped the bottle in the hangar and told the lineman I'd finally joined the real world. The flute wobbled in his hand. I heard glass in the future. I tried speaking in the dialect he respected, parts, jigs, repeatable skill. Over meatloaf, I pitched my favorite idea. "Veteran apprenticeship," I said, laying schematics across his placemat, sheet metal, composites, harness. "Old hands teach new hands to listen to metal. Your tricks with tolerances, put them back to work." He chewed like the fork had filing burrs and shrugged. "Airplanes are toys," he said. "The shop floor makes America." So I built it anyway. Luis wrote a curriculum that smelled like solvent and vocabulary. We bought secondhand benches and painted them until they looked like a promise. The first day, an apprentice set a rivet proud and froze. Luis tapped the bucking bar with 2 fingers. "Smaller bite," he said. "Let the tool do the hurting." The sound the gun made when the head laid down right, patang, hit the hangar in a way that felt like truth. I mounted one of Dad's old wrenches. Mom found it in a milk crate by the water heater, above the time clock. "Your tool," I told the class, "our spec." The metal's handle had thinned where his grip had worn it honest. I ran my thumb down that shiny groove and felt both the rebuke and the blessing. General Franklin's first message came after a night leg when the hangar smelled like de-icer and paper cups. Not an aide. Him, Baltimore medevac. "Your crew's discipline kept a corridor alive. I prefer operators who worship checklists." I read it twice, then set the phone face down so pride wouldn't try to perform. In the morning, Dad was at the VFW, telling the same room I had a little gig, and he had real stories. Mom touched my elbow on the way out. "He's afraid," she whispered, "of losing you to a language he can't speak." I kept translating. I started taping Ruth's note above the breakers before every start because some systems live in the chest, not the panel. Tap, tap. I sent a proposal packet for the apprenticeship to a board that likes numbers more than nouns. Rates, retention, reskilling, torque-spec culture. The packet came back stamped review, the bureaucrat's version of maybe. And then Franklin called with the inspection charter, his tone the exact shape of respect. "Bring the company you built," he wrote. "Leave the apology at home." The night before the flight, I walked the line with Luis. The hangar door leaked a stripe of cool air across the floor. Our bird threw back the strip lights in long, calm edges. We traced conduit runs with flashlight cones, felt the fasteners one by one, until muscle memory reported correct. The apprentices watched with their hands in their pockets on purpose. I held up Dad's mounted wrench. You ready? I asked the room. The wrench didn't answer. It didn't need to. The pilot badge tapped once, tap, and the glass that hadn't yet shattered seemed to wait for a better story. In the kitchen, Mom fussed with a ribbon on a gift bag built to make a moment gentle. He'll be impossible tomorrow, she said, meaning Dad, meaning the weather inside him. He's loud when he's scared. I'll be precise, I said. Loud is how you strip a bolt. Sleep smelled like old laundry and avgas caught in my hair. Dawn tasted like aluminum and coffee gone brave. On the way to the field, we passed the VF2. The neon sign sputtered and then held. In the passenger footwell, the binder's edge pressed a line into my palm the way good plans do. The thank you note waited above the breakers. The apprentice wrench waited on the wall. The badge tapped, tap, tap, and the day lined up like a runway with the big numbers clear, 27 straight ahead. The VFW smelled like spilled beer and furniture polish. Flags along the wall had settled into a permanent dusk. Dad held court under the TV, laugh hitting the tin ceiling a half-second late. My pilot badge tapped my collarbone. Tap, tap, when I slid onto the end stool. I wrapped both hands around a glass of water so I wouldn't waste words on a room that liked its stories pre-sanded. Jane's got a big day tomorrow, Dad announced, chin lifted. 4-star wants a tour of pretend. The men chuckled into their highballs. Smart kid, he added. Generous as a coupon. No grit. You'll come back when you miss tools. The bartender, a Vietnam cap and hands that didn't spill, set a coaster in front of me like a truce. Hanging steady? He asked, eyes on my badge, not my father. Steady, I said. We fly numbers, then lives. My phone buzzed. Clean, haptic confidence. A message slid in from a restricted contact. General Robert Franklin. Ms. Thompson, inspection flight confirmed. I read your Baltimore after action. Your crew kept a corridor alive. I prefer operators who worship checklists. Bring the company you built. Leave apology at home. The room thinned to the jukebox's old warble and the clack of pool balls like polite thunder. I read it twice, then set the phone face down so pride wouldn't lean on the horn. Dad leaned with that cologne of victory he wore for old friends. Texting sponsors? He needled. Ask him if he wants a real tour. I'll show him rivets. Tomorrow's not a tour, I said. It's a flight. Cute, he said. Outside, the parking lot air held the day's heat like a secret. Moths jittered around a buzzing lamp. The pilot badge tapped again, tap, tap, as if to say, fly your numbers. Under the amber light, I typed, copy. Wheels up 0900, crew briefed. No apologies manifest. His reply came back in a single word that fit like a salute. Good. Back at the hangar, Jet A and cold aluminum made the kind of clean smell that resets a brain. Luis was under the wing. Flashlight cone tracing conduit runs like prayer beads. Ops pinged? He asked without looking up. Franklin himself, I said. He read Baltimore. Luis grinned a notch. Then he already knows who's flying the airplane. We walked the line once more, boots clicking on the painted stripe, our breath small in the big dark. The apprentices watched with their hands in their pockets on purpose. I tapped Ruth's crayon sun above the breakers, tap, tap, and the paper warmed under my knuckles like a promise. Dawn arrived metal bright. The hangar door rolled back and pulled cool air across the floor. Mom fussed a ribbon on a gift bag in the kitchen, perfume a soft halo over coffee. He'll be impossible, she said, meaning Dad, meaning weather. I'll be precise, I said, and kissed her cheek. At the field, Dad beat us there and found nothing impressive on purpose. This it? He said, eyeing the Falcon like it had taken his parking spot. Looks delicate. It's certified, I said. Delicate is for feelings. He drifted along the stripe, narrating disapproval. No grit. These kids, he waved at my line, wouldn't last a week on a floor. Luis intercepted, calm as torque. They last just fine in weather. Please stay behind the line, sir. A black SUV slid into our bay and idled. The rear door opened and General Franklin stepped out in blues pressed to a thesis, aide a beat behind. He scanned the ramp, clocked the freshly swept arc of glass by the chalk and found me. The handshake was firm without theater. Ms. Thompson, he said. Good morning. Sir, I said. Aircraft checks complete. Crew briefed. Dad moved in, smile set for a crowd. General George Thompson. Jane's smart, sure, just no grit. Bit of a disappointment. The air cooled a degree. Franklin didn't change expression, he didn't need to. He set his hand on the stair rail and spoke in a tone that puts bolts back where they belong. This is Jane's aircraft, he said. Her company, her team. My badge tapped once. Tap, and went still. The tug chose silence. Mom's ribbon sagged and learned something. Luis passed me the log, thumb on the checklist like a benediction. I took the stairs 2 at a time. The cabin swallowed me in lemon wipes and leather. At the breaker panel, I slid Ruth's thank you under the clip and felt the paper's edge catch my skin. Outside, Dad stood with his hands empty for the first time all morning. We weren't rehearsing anymore. We were about to fly. The cabin smelled like leather and lemon wipes. The door seal thumped home with that soft, confident kiss. My pilot badge tapped my collarbone. Tap, tap, while the panel bloomed alive. Battery, avionics, APU spooling with a low turbine purr. I slid Ruth's crayon sun under the breaker clip where my fingers always checked before start. Paper rasped. My pulse found its cadence. Luis leaned in with the log. Hydraulics topped. Fresh O2. No Mel's, he said, voice the shape of calm. Right main still chatty and taxi, balanced and within spec. Copy. I ran flows, fuel, hydraulics, flight controls. Yoke smooth, trim thumb wheel clicking like a metronome that trusted me. Through the windshield, heat shivered off the ramp. Dad stood behind the safety stripe with empty hands and a mouth that still wanted a job. Mom's gift bag drooped. The ribbon had learned gravity. General Franklin settled into the forward club seat, cap on his knee, eyes taking inventory without stealing time. He pressed the intercom. Ms. Thompson, my aide will pass route updates en route. Your call on any deviation. You have it, sir, I said. 2 engines, 1 spine. Dad tried a last intrusion, voice pitched for the aisle. Sticky doors, fancy buttons. Get her coffee, son, he told our FO, a kid named Mira with a brain like a checklist and wrists that knew restraint. Mira didn't flinch. Pre-start complete, Captain, she said to me, tone respectful, not apologetic. Mini turn. Cass winked door seal, AR mid, and a faint hiss feathered my left ear. I kept my hands visible. Luis, right mid didn't bite. He was already at the frame. Hold packs, he said, palm thumping the gasket with a text benediction. Seated, check your KS. The light died, the hiss went with it. Dad snorted. Drama over a rubber band. Luis didn't look at him. Big airplane, little tolerances, he said, and slid the log into my hand like a gavel. Before start complete, I called. Clear right, clear left. Clear, they answered. Ignition, spool, ITT rising smooth. The cabin breathed warmer. Jet A's sweet edge hung a moment, then settled back into the day. Ground cleared us. The tug beeped and eased. We rolled, nose wheel on the line with small, final corrections. Outside, Luis braced his forearm on the fuselage window, watching rubber like it owed him rent. 5 knots, a whisper of shimmy. He tapped the metal twice, good. And I tapped the yoke once, copy. At the hold short, I ran the last items. Flap set, trim set, spoilers armed. Mira's redback was clean as a click. The tower's cadence slid into our headsets. Thompson 1, line up and wait. Traffic 2-mile final. A Cessna ghosted past. Sunlight flashed on its wing, then a shadow skated our panel and was gone. Dad edged into the sightline again, palms open to the ramp like he wanted to catch applause that wasn't on offer. Franklin buckled himself without comment. The belt click did the talking. Cleared for takeoff, Thompson 1. Throttles, I said. Power came up smooth. Numbers kissed their marks. Airspeed alive. 80, Mira called. V1. Rotate. I eased. The nose came with me like a forgiven thing. The runway fell, the town flattened. The sky opened its practical blue. Gear up, positive rate. My badge tapped, tap, tap, and the thank you note fluttered against the clip as if to say, remember why. At 1,000 feet, the aide leaned forward, voice low. Sail over the river, request 10 left. Approved, I said. Already in. Mira's grin hid in her downcast eyes. We liked when our plans met theirs halfway. Center lit our scope with a VFR triangle wandering into our departure path like a kid on a bike. I nudged 2 degrees right, called traffic, and bled a sliver of climb to keep our wake from tilting his day. Franklin's voice rode the intercom, dry. Nice catch. Boring is beautiful, I said. Behind us, the cabin settled. The attendant offered water. Dad took it without jokes, the cup creasing a little under his thumb. Mom folded the tissue flat in her lap, the gift bag now only bag. We leveled at 10, slid into smooth. The river flashed pewter, fields stitched into brown and green quilts. A highway unwound like tape. I let the autopilot carry the bones and kept the hand flying in my wrists where it lives. Mira managed radios. Luis rode jump seat with a small smile aimed at the trim wheel like an old friend. Mini turn. A flicker on the panel. HYDUX pump. Temp rise. Just a tick above normal. I watched it for 2 beats, then clicked the flood off to see if panel heat was lying. Temp slid back. False flirt, I said. Agreed, Luis said. Log the flirt. Fix the date. He scribbled a line in neat caps. Our shop wall where Dad's old wrench hung liked logs like that. Truth that didn't beg for drama. Approach handed us down. I briefed the arrival clean. Speeds, gates, runway under construction, displaced threshold. If the crosswind stiffens, we'll take the extra box, I said. Otherwise, one and done. Copy, Mira said. We intercepted the localizer. Flaps marched down, each notch a small surrender that made us more honest to air. Gear thunked. I felt it in my molars. The world narrowed to centerline and winds aloft, to a bead of sweat I didn't wipe because the landing owned both hands. We kissed the runway with 1 clean syllable. Spoilers chattered up. Brakes, reverse. The cabin exhaled the way rooms do when competence turns back into furniture. Ms. Thompson, Franklin said, unbuckling with the patience of men who let competence exit first. Your brief was instruction. Anytime, sir, I said, we do boring very well. We rolled to the stand. Out the window, a maintenance crew in grease-grimed coveralls waited with wrenches flashing in their fists. Dad watched them the way men remember a language they used to speak. The marshaller's wands cut the heat. The tug nudged. Chocks kissed tires. Parking brake. Fuel pumps off. The panel dimmed from galaxy to night sky in 3 clicks that always feel like truth. I touched Ruth's crayon sun, tap, tap, before I stood. Through the oval, I clocked movement near the hangar mouth. A small figure with a lopsided ponytail and an envelope, bouncing on her toes, hand in a woman's grip. Not yet. The moment would be theirs in a few minutes. Cabin door? I said. On you, Mira answered. Luis checked the window one more time, then looked at me like he always does after a clean leg. No parade, just that 2-degree nod. Right main behaved, he said. Keep the note handy. Always, I said. I cracked the door. Heat and jet A and faint hydraulic breath flowed in. On the ramp, Dad squared his shoulders as if the air could forget what it had just learned. He opened his mouth and then didn't. The hangar swallowed the echo of his earlier joke and returned only the beep of a backing tug and the scrape of a broom on concrete. The day had found its lane. The hinge had taken weight without squeal. We were exactly where we should be to watch Pride learn a better shape. Heat shimmered above the ramp. Jet A breathed sweet and metallic. I lowered the air stair. The latch thunked home, hollow, correct. General Franklin paused at the top step, cap nested under his arm. Below, a small girl with a lopsided ponytail, Ruth, bounced beside her mother, a paper envelope clutched in both hands. The maintenance crew formed an easy half moon, coveralls, wrenches glinting. My pilot badge tapped my collarbone once, tap, and went still. Dad edged forward like a man about to take back a room. Neat ride, he announced, too loud. The real work still. Franklin didn't raise his voice. He set his palm on the stair rail like a flag planting. This is Jane's aircraft, he said. Her company, her team. The hangar air shifted, 1 degree cooler. Luis stood by the nose gear, logbook nested in his arm, eyes steady. Mom's ribbon sagged. The gift bag learned gravity. Somewhere by the fuel cart, a forgotten flute kissed a step stool and shattered, bright as a warning. The shards skittered. Everyone looked down, then up. I stepped onto concrete that tasted like tin and sun. Ruth tugged free, took 3 determined steps, and lifted the envelope to my chest. "Pilot Jane," she said, breathless. "For you." Jet A and paper blended when I took it. Inside, a crayon sky, a crooked rectangle with stubborn wings, 3 dots for windows, and a sun that refused to stay in the corner. "Thank you for flying me out of the bad water." A sticker heart covered the tail as if to hold it on. "Perfect," I said. "I needed a new checklist." Ruth's mom stayed back, eyes wet. She mouthed thank you like a prayer that knew when to whisper. I tucked the card under my badge, paper warm, weight light, and exact. Dad reached for the drawing, reflex more than claim. I didn't hand it over. His hand fell, fingers oil-scarred by a life that knew metal, not this. He looked past me at the coveralls, at wrenches raised from habit, at a crew standing the way he once did around a lathe. His face tried out 1,000 arguments, and found none that could stand outdoors. Franklin faced the line. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "some fly passengers, some fly missions. Ms. Thompson flies both. Her crew kept a corridor alive in Baltimore. She built a shop so veterans' hands don't go quiet when factories do." A mechanic in a sun-bleached cap lifted his chin. "Respect," he said, and the half-moon straightened. No applause, just bodies aligning. Stand moved like a slow wave through heat. Dad swallowed. "She's smart," he tried, softer. No grit. Luis answered for the room, voice made of torque and truth. "She's grit with checklists." Mom edged closer, palm hovering near my sleeve without smudging it. "You kept a child breathing," she said, as if the words belonged to a different family and were learning their way home. Mini turn. One of our apprentices, Kirk, appeared at the bay door with a broom. He paused at the glitter line and looked to Dad. No words. Dad took the handle. He swept. Slow, careful. Pride turned into work without a speech. Franklin stepped down, the stair flexing once beneath controlled weight. He nodded toward the shop wall where my mounted apprentice wrench hung above the time clock, handle thinned by years of my father's grip. "Mr. Thompson," he said, "your daughter built a room on the bones of your stories." Dad stared at the wrench like it had just answered him. He cleared his throat. "Airplanes aren't toys," he murmured, to no one and everyone. I was wrong. I kept my voice level. "We can use what you know." He blinked at the line between jet and shop, then back at me. "You'll have me?" 1,500, I said. "Fixtures and feel." His mouth tried a smile that didn't need teeth. He nodded once. Ruth tugged my sleeve again. "Is it your plane?" she asked, verifying jurisdiction like a tiny inspector. "It is," I said. "We keep it safe for people who need it." "Like me," she said, as if reminding me of my own line. Luis tapped the logbook twice, our shop salute. "Good numbers," he called. "Right main behaved." "Copy," I said. Franklin's aide lifted a phone, took a single photo, put it away. Documentation without theater. The fluffy white of the hangar fan pushed a ribbon of cool through our cluster. The scent of simple green threaded Jet A. The shards in the dustpan flashed once, then went dull. I held Ruth's card against my chest and faced the people who would repeat this version of the story. "Glass broke so forgiveness could be poured," I said. The line took it in. The mechanic with the sun-bleached cap tipped his head like a man agreeing with gravity. Mom exhaled something she'd held for years. Dad looked at the broom in his hands, then at the mounted wrench, then at me. His chin dipped. Small, earned. Franklin gave me the briefest of nods, the kind that carries orders without weight. "Debrief after," he said under his breath. "Funding is waiting on your packet." "Copy," I said. Behind us, the tug beeped, practical as a metronome. Ahead, the shop door framed a square of shade that looked like a new room. My pilot badge tapped once, tap, and stilled. The ramp's noise settled into instruction. Pride had cracked. The work could finally begin. Heat shimmered above the ramp. Jet A breathed sweet and metallic. I lowered the air stair. The latch thunked home. Hollow, correct. General Franklin paused at the top step, cap nested under his arm. Below, a small girl with a lopsided ponytail, Ruth, bounced beside her mother, a paper envelope clutched in both hands. The maintenance crew formed an easy half moon, coveralls, wrenches glinting. My pilot badge tapped my collarbone once, tap, and went still. Dad edged forward like a man about to take back a room. "Neat ride," he announced, too loud. "The real work's still—" Franklin didn't raise his voice. He set his palm on the stair rail like a flag planting. "This is Jane's aircraft," he said, "her company, her team." The hangar air shifted, 1 degree cooler. Louis stood by the nose gear, logbook nested in his arm, eyes steady. Mom's ribbon sagged. The gift bag learned gravity. Somewhere by the fuel cart, a forgotten flute kissed a step stool and shattered, bright as a warning. The shards skittered. Everyone looked down, then up. I stepped onto concrete that tasted like tin and sun. Ruth tugged free, took 3 determined steps, and lifted the envelope to my chest. "Pilot Jane," she said, breathless. "For you." Jet A and paper blended when I took it. Inside, a crayon sky, a crooked rectangle with stubborn wings, 3 dots for windows, and a sun that refused to stay in the corner. "Thank you for flying me out of the bad water." A sticker heart covered the tail as if to hold it on. "Perfect," I said. I needed a new checklist. Ruth's mom stayed back, eyes wet. She mouthed thank you like a prayer that knew when to whisper. I tucked the card under my badge, paper warm, weight light, and exact. Dad reached for the drawing, reflex more than claim. I didn't hand it over. His hand fell, fingers oil-scarred by a life that knew metal, not this. He looked past me at the coveralls, at wrenches raised from habit, at a crew standing the way he once did around a lathe. His face tried out 1,000 arguments and found none that could stand outdoors. Franklin faced the line. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "some fly passengers, some fly missions. Ms. Thompson flies both. Her crew kept a corridor alive in Baltimore. She built a shop so veterans' hands don't go quiet when factories do." A mechanic in a sun-bleached cap lifted his chin. "Respect," he said, and the half-moon straightened. No applause, just bodies aligning. Stand moved like a slow wave through heat. Dad swallowed. "She's smart." He tried softer. "No grit." Luis answered for the room, voice made of torque and truth. "She's grit with checklists." Mom edged closer, palm hovering near my sleeve without smudging it. "You kept a child breathing," she said, as if the words belonged to a different family and were learning their way home. Mini turn. One of our apprentices, Kirk, appeared at the bay door with a broom. He paused at the glitter line and looked to Dad. No words. Dad took the handle, he swept. Slow, careful. Pride turned into work without a speech. Franklin stepped down, the stair flexing once beneath controlled weight. He nodded toward the shop wall where my mounted apprentice wrench hung above the time clock, handle thinned by years of my father's grip. "Mr. Thompson," he said, "your daughter built a room on the bones of your stories." Dad stared at the wrench like it had just answered him. He cleared his throat. "Airplanes aren't toys," he murmured, to no one and everyone. I was wrong. I kept my voice level. "We can use what you know." He blinked at the line between jet and shop, then back at me. "You'll have me?" 1,500, I said. "Fixtures and feel." His mouth tried a smile that didn't need teeth. He nodded once. Ruth tugged my sleeve again. "Is it your plane?" she asked, verifying jurisdiction like a tiny inspector. "It is," I said. "We keep it safe for people who need it." "Like me?" she said, as if reminding me of my own line. Luis tapped the logbook twice, our shop salute. "Good numbers," he called. "Right main behaved." "Copy," I said. Franklin's aide lifted a phone, took a single photo, put it away. Documentation without theater. The fluffy white of the hangar fan pushed a ribbon of cool through our cluster. The scent of simple green threaded Jet A. The shards in the dustpan flashed once, then went dull. I held Ruth's card against my chest and faced the people who would repeat this version of the story. Glass broke so forgiveness could be poured, I said. The line took it in. The mechanic with the sun-bleached cap tipped his head like a man agreeing with gravity. Mom exhaled something she'd held for years. Dad looked at the broom in his hands, then at the mounted wrench, then at me. His chin dipped, small, earned. Franklin gave me the briefest of nods, the kind that carries orders without weight. "Debrief after," he said under his breath. "Funding is waiting on your packet." "Copy," I said. Behind us, the tug beeped, practical as a metronome. Ahead, the shop door framed a square of shade that looked like a new room. My pilot badge tapped once, tap, and stilled. The ramp's noise settled into instruction. Pride had cracked. The work could finally begin. Ribbon Day smelled like primer and warm aluminum, with a drift of coffee riding the hangar fans. The mayor's sash flashed. The local reporter balanced a camera on one shoulder. Our apprentices lined up in clean gloves, nerves crackling like static. My pilot badge tapped my collarbone, tap, and went still. On the corkboard, Ruth's crayon sun shared space with the day's schedule. The apprentice wrench above the clock caught a white seam of light. General Franklin kept the mic short. "Old skills, new air," he said. "Thompson Hands isn't about volume. It's about standards." He nodded toward the line, veterans, a tech school kid, 2 machinists looking for a second act, and handed the oversized scissors to the mayor. Dad stepped in without grandstanding and held the ribbon level. His sleeves were rolled. A crescent of grease stained the hair at his wrist like an old signature. Snip. The room made the small, honest cheer people give the start of real work. Then, without cue, bodies straightened. Not applause. Stand moved from the back row to the door and back again. Luis set a square of felt on the bench and placed a round paperweight in the center. Glass fused from yesterday's shards, edge softened, a single air bubble caught like a held breath. Dad cleared his throat. "For you," he said. He turned it so I could read the etched bottom. "The day pride broke. Love could open." I felt the weight, light, exact, and set it by the sign-off pad where we initial the day's work. "We kept a piece," I said. We made it useful." "Made it honest," Dad answered. We toured the stations for the crowd. Safety wire sung to 10. Torque wrenches click counted like hymns. A young vet trimmed a rivet tail flush. Dad tapped her wrist. "Smaller bite," he said. "Gentler this time." She smiled without looking up and nailed the next twist. The shop noise didn't swell. It settled, the way a room does when it remembers what tools are for. Mini turn. Ruth slipped from the tangle of grown-ups and tugged my sleeve. "I drew another one," she announced, breath loud in the quiet. This time it was our shop. Benches, bright faces, planes small in the corner and people big. She taped it below the first note. Crayon wax sweetened the solvent air. Franklin handed me a thin folder, board signatures crisp, ink still sharp. "Second cohort funded," he said. "Keep it boring and brave." "Copy," I said. My badge tapped once, tap, and held. After the mayor left and the reporter packed her questions, the hangar exhaled back to its ordinary hum. Dad lingered at the cinder block wall we'd left blank. He wiped it with lemon oil like you'd dust a headstone, then mounted a plaque he'd brought wrapped in butcher paper, sheet metal brushed to a soft sheen, letters stamped by hand. "We all build something. Fix it when it cracks." He stepped back, checking level by eye, then with an old gauge he'd slipped into his pocket, out of habit. It was true both ways. Mom stood with her palm on the bench where the paperweight held the sign-off log. "You kept a child breathing," she said, "not fragile now, just quiet." "We all kept her," I said, looking at Luis at the line, at the tools hung in their lanes. "That's the point." We cleaned the floor the way we always do. Broom, dustpan, a final swipe that tells concrete it matters. Franklin shook Dad's hand, firm, brief, and left with his aide, blues catching a last seam of light as the door swung. The fan ticked once and settled. I climbed the ladder into the Falcon and set Ruth's new drawing beside the first. The cockpit smelled like lemon wipes and old Jet A. The breaker label under my fingers felt like a habit I trusted. I tapped the clip, Tap, tap, and let both notes anchor the panel. Back on the floor, I pressed the paperweight into place, then laid a hand on the apprentice wrench. Metal held the warmth of 100 palms. The handle's worn groove matched my fingers and his. Beside it, Dad sorted gauges with the unshowy patience of a man rewriting his manual. 1,500, he said without looking up. Fixtures and feel. Bring a story with the measurements, I said. I can measure both now, he answered, and the room agreed. Dusk reached in through the bay door and spread a gold stripe across the concrete. The plaque caught it first. The line thinned to the last few apprentices washing citrus soap off solvent hands. Our whiteboard kept its new header, Thompson Hands, ink drying to a thin shine. I set my palm on the sign-off pad, felt the glass and paper give just enough, and set it for the people who would carry it out of this room and into their kitchens, their shops, their quieter stories. Glass broke so forgiveness could be poured. The hanger held the sentence and let it rest where it needed to. My pilot badge tapped once. Tap. And the day clicked into place like threads meeting a bolt that's finally true. We all build something. Love is fixing it when it cracks. If you believe forgiveness heals families and pride can become support, subscribe for stories about legacy, courage, and the quiet strength of second chances.